We have Sara Carter, Fox News investigative reporter. She's been there from the beginning. Greg Jarrett, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump. And he is a civil libertarian, and he is a criminal defense attorney. David Schoen, welcome all of you to the program. Sara, let's start first with you and the news. It's getting louder by the second.
It's getting louder, and Sean, they are going to have to actually announce or appoint someone to do a thorough investigation, because now that we know those memos are out there, and remember, this is what Congress has been asking for some time. There has been a big fight in getting McCabe's memos. A lot of people knew that McCabe kept copious notes. They wanted to see the memos. Now these memos have leaked to the New York Times, and it's explosive, because what it's saying is that Rod Rosenstein, along with others, look, Rosenstein wasn't just talking to himself. He wasn't sitting in an office just babbling like a lunatic. He was in there speaking with others. Jeff Sessions, other people within the office. He actually was planning on invoking the 25th Amendment. He was talking about that, of removing the President of the United States, of wiretapping the President of the United States. So the government definitely needs to investigate this. There needs to be a thorough investigation, and anybody connected to this is going to have to be removed. There is no way Rod Rosenstein can stay there. And you know what surprised me even more, Sean, was the fact that the Department of Justice spokesperson on background, who spoke to both CNN and some other news outlets, said that, he was just joking around.
You don't joke around about something like that.
Don't joke around, exactly.
That's when you have nothing to defend. But it's interesting that Rosenstein himself went to the president to slow walk the documents that he declassified this week, and that he wanted unredacted in expeditious fashion. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be released, but the Inspector General is looking at it, and apparently the president said to do it quickly. Your thoughts, Greg Jarrett?
Well, Rod Rosenstein has been, as I've said on your air, has been trying to obstruct the release of documents because those documents incriminate him. And now we know the McCabe memos incriminate Rod Rosenstein. As I said in a tweet just a short time ago, Rosenstein was driven by vengeance to try to secretly record the president and to engage essentially in a coup, an overthrow of the Trump government. So Rosenstein must be fired immediately. He was clearly biased against the president, and yet he's the guy who is supposed to be objectively in charge of the Mueller investigation. So the special counsel investigation should be terminated. This illegitimate probe has been tainted by corruption from the very beginning. It's exactly what I argue in 12 chapters of my book, The Russia Hoax.
Let me bring in David Schoen. David, at this point now, the deep state seems to be turning on each other, because McCabe had contemporaneous notes that he had written and memoranda that he had written that shows that Rod Rosenstein was saying all of this. Now, I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. If you have somebody in that position of power that has these radical views and is also conflicted every which way in Sunday, how does that person possibly survive?
The only thing shocking to me is that we're still having this conversation. We've been talking about Rod Rosenstein having to go for a long time. It's a government of laws, not of men. It's not about personalities. And by the way, it shouldn't fall on the president to have to make a move to fire him. Jeff Sessions must fire him. Jeff Sessions is in charge of the integrity of that department as the first line. There's no question about it. If he's joking, he should be fired for making that kind of joke. There's not a question anymore. And by the way, we've seen parallels to this thing when you talk about them turning on each other. Remember, Comey and McCabe are at odds on their stories. Remember, we have the Strzok memo about a meeting that he had in McCabe's office with McCabe, he says. McCabe says he doesn't recall it, about making sure that Trump isn't elected and all that. So this whole crew has had these conversations. If you needed one other reason for declassification and transparency, this is it. I want to make one last point. All of these critics now, Nadler, whoever it is on the left, criticizing the idea of declassification. Their entire careers have been about open government and that sort of thing. It is President Obama who in 2009 signed Executive Order 13526 that made the president the final arbiter on declassification, and it was all on a campaign of transparency. This is why we need to have, you don't need any more evidence on why we need these documents out in the open.
It's amazing. Democrats now are scared to death. Chucky Schumer with a statement on this story. Now, I wonder if he'd say the same thing if this was any Democrat. Rod Rosenstein wanting to secretly record the president and remove and commit a coup in America. Anyway, he said this story must not be used as a pretext for the corrupt purpose of firing the Deputy Attorney General in order to install an official who will allow the president to interfere with the special counsel investigation. Generals Kelly, Mattis, and numerous White House and cabinet officials have been reported to say critical things of the president without being fired. Nice try, Chucky. I don't think that's going to work. Sarah.
This isn't just critical. This is stating a coup. I mean, what we've seen, Sean, from the beginning has been a concerted effort to remove this president once he was elected. We knew beforehand they were trying to stop him from getting elected. After he was elected, there was an insurance policy. People were working in concert with one another to see him removed. And I'm telling you, the evidence just keeps growing. Every time we think, oh, there can't be more than this, something else comes out. Right now, I think another issue, and I know what David Schoen's saying, if Jeff Sessions even had an ounce of integrity, he would go ahead and fire Rosenstein immediately. The problem is, was Jeff Sessions involved in these conversations? So now who's going to take care of that? Because there may be evidence out there that we just don't have a handle on yet. And if Jeff
by the way, there was a suggestion. It was a suggestion that, in fact, Andrew McCabe has Jeff Sessions in one of these Rod rants. Now, he has a notorious temper, but all right, you guys stay there. We've got to take a break. We'll have a few more moments with David, Greg, and Sarah. All right, here we go. All the evidence that you needed that, in fact, the deep state is now turning on each other. McCabe's lawyer has now come out and insisted that the memos that led to the New York Times article, Rosenstein suggested he secretly record the president and discuss the 25th Amendment, meaning that he was trying to create a coup along with others, that now McCabe is saying that those quotes are accurate. We continue with Sarah, David, and Greg Jarrett. Greg Jarrett, your reaction.
This was, and I said it a moment ago, it's worth repeating. This was an attempted coup. This was a plot to overthrow President Trump. And there were saboteurs who plotted this in the Department of Justice and the FBI. And I'll name them. Rod Rosenstein. And he should be immediately fired for this. James Comey, he was a saboteur and a plotter, and he was already fired. McCabe, of course, fired. Peter Strzok, fired. Lisa Page resigned before she was fired. These were all of the participants in an attempt to frame Donald Trump for something he didn't do, and they knew he didn't collude with Russia. They didn't care. They used a phony document that they knew came from a guy who just made it up, who hated Trump, and they used it as a pretext to try to attempt this coup of our government.
All right, we're running out of time. Quick last comments from Sarah and David.
Sean, I believe there will be so much more evidence coming forward. There were more people involved in this. Now we know Rod Rosenstein and what his involvement was, as well as the other officials from the FBI. I guarantee you we're going to see more evidence come out about higher level officials within other agencies, and we've got to keep our eye out for that. There needs to be a complete criminal investigation into this, and the government needs to purge those people from these agencies that were attempting to do this and expose them for what they are.
David.
If Senator Schumer and Jerry Nadler have a beef with anyone, it's with Mr. McCabe. Tell him not to keep detailed notes. Michael Bromwich is his lawyer, former inspector general. He says he kept detailed notes. He's not a fiction writer. These are from his notes. Rosenstein is out. Sessions has to fire him. I don't want Noah Francisco in there either. It's a cesspool. Clear it out. Bring someone in from the outside. And
all right.
Schumer and the others.
Thank you all.